What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Cover Crimson here on the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. We're going to watch Kalen, DeBoer, and staff, Alabama versus LSU. Let's get this thing going. Let's get it started, and then we're going to have a good time on the show. Roll Tide, everybody. All right, we got past the bye week, Clint, and now we get ready for Alabama and LSU. Brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND, just like the helmet on my shirt here, and they'll double your initial deposit. All right, we're going to hear from Coach DeBoer and his two assistants, so we'll get to that when they come up. But, Clint, finally a meaningful game, right?
Yeah, it's kind of felt like all of them have been meaningful recently. But anybody that said that the regular season would be diminished was greatly mistaken. It's been an interesting season so far. We saw that again this past weekend. Alabama didn't play, but a lot of top 25, a lot of top 20 teams, a lot of teams ahead of Alabama all lost. And that created an opportunity for Alabama to move back up to number 11. I think LSU's at number 14, if I'm not mistaken, which is what Alabama was previously ranked. And so that makes for an even more intriguing matchup. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious to hear what DeBoer and company have to say coming out of the bye week. I mean, I will say, Mick, I was doing some research. When you look at Kalen DeBoer, if he's had more than 1 week to prepare, meaning not just, sometimes it was like they'd play on like a Friday and then they'd play on a Saturday the next week. So that's 8 days. That's not what I mean. Anytime they've had more than 1 week, meaning coming out of a bye week or preparing for a bowl game where you got multiple weeks, Kalen DeBoer as a head coach, at least on the Division I level, is 7-1. He lost his first game when he was at Fresno State against Nevada. When there was a couple of weeks back in 2020, a couple of games were canceled due to COVID. And when they came back, they lost in Nevada, but they've gone on a 7-game win streak. And that includes wins over, if you look at Alabama, number 2, Georgia, last year at Washington, number 3, Texas, and number 8, Oregon, by the way, coming off of their bye week last year. They got a win over them. 2022, they beat number 20, Texas. And they also beat an Oregon State team that year who was coming off of, or at least at that time was ranked in the top 25. So they've beaten some pretty good teams. They've been pretty good as far as when they've had extra time to prepare. Kalen DeBoer's had those guys ready, and so hopefully we see something similar this weekend.
And I think this is a big one for him too, just because, you want to win your rivalry games, and didn't beat Tennessee. You also want to establish that you can win on the road in the SEC. But this one's big for both teams. I mean, there's pressure on both teams to do well. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Jalen Milroe. Some people are saying, hey, man, he may have to come back next year because his draft stock has dropped so much. But he's got 4 games left to do something about that. Have you heard any of that talk? And he was looking at like maybe being the first or second quarterback, and some people have him slotted down past 6.
That's an interesting discussion and something that we'll definitely need to start talking about. I think you need to see how Alabama finishes down the stretch, how he performs down the stretch, if he can kind of get things going again. He started to show some signs of life against Missouri. Yeah. So if he can do some big things in Baton Rouge, end up playing well against Auburn, we'll see what happens as far as, the college football playoffs or whatever. You could see his draft stock start to move back in the other direction, start to move back in the, upward direction. But I will say, I don't really think it's helping his cause right now that guys like Anthony Richardson has gotten benched and Trey Lance has been a huge bust in the NFL after the 49ers moved up to take him number 2 overall. Those are kind of similar quarterbacks to a Jalen Milroe. And with the way that the NFL wants to push guys to start early, I mean, Anthony Richardson really had no business being an early starter in his NFL career. Trey Lance, especially coming from North Dakota State, he shouldn't have been, asked to start early in his career either. But that's kind of how it ended up working out for them, and neither have performed very well. And so I think for a similar style player like Milroe, who's got some of those same limitations, that might make teams reluctant to take him high. But at the same time, they'll do their individual evaluation, and it'll depend on how he finishes down the stretch. Obviously, he's got a lot more experience than Anthony Richardson did at Florida, so that's already a bonus for him. But we'll just kind of have to see how it works out.
And that'll be also an opportunity on Saturday for him to kind of have that breakout game he had against LSU last year. And I feel like he's got to run the football more effectively. I mean, that's a big part of his game. And so, running the football. And I heard A.J. McCarron say that, on the, what is it, Siskey and, oh, come on, help me out. A McCready podcast, that he's like, look, that he just needs to go look one, look two, and then run. And I don't disagree with that, man. I mean, like, if that's what you do it, because last year when we played LSU, he was running on those guys, and it made such a big difference in the way that you defend him. And it just feels like when he was struggling, it was because he was staying in the pocket.
Yeah. And that's kind of, that's been a knock that a lot of people have had on Jalen, is kind of him adopting this, wanting to be a pocket passer, but that's, completely going against, one of your top strengths. And it's not that you can't stay in the pocket. If you can do both, I mean, do both. You got to be able to prove that you can do both, but that just makes you all the more versatile. Teams will have a really tough time defending you. If you can win from within the pocket and you can escape and win outside the pocket, that only is going to help your value. If you've got to do one or the other a little bit more in certain games based off of how defenses are playing you, then you've got to do it. But you've got to be willing to take those opportunities in the run game when they present themselves, because all that's going to do is aid you, when you're trying to maybe stay in the pocket later in the game. If you keep hammering a team that's doing, rushing a little bit too far upfield, you're hitting some lanes on them, picking up some yards on the ground. They have to kind of start slow playing you a little bit. Do some different things with their pass rush, really play on their heels a little bit on that front. And then you've got a little bit more time in the pocket to operate, and that could help you in the passing game. So and we saw a little bit of that. He started to recapture a little bit of that ability against Missouri, and just hopefully he can continue to develop on that front.
Well, we're expecting the coaches to jump on here soon, guys. Give us a roll tide. The way that you say roll tide on here is just with a little thumbs up. We appreciate you for hanging out with us on Cover Crimson. And don't forget about the covercrimson.com page. We want you to be a member over there. Get the premium package, and you get the Cover Crimson t-shirt with the annual subscription. So do that. Clint, you're constantly on there. Working, and what should they expect to see this week?
Well, Mick, Stacy got us started early over there. He's already kind of looking at some matchups, players to watch. He's wanting to get the subscribers' opinions on it. I'll be joining in that conversation later. I kind of wanted to continue to kind of look at the game, look at some matchups that I like. I'll probably do that, tomorrow or Wednesday. But really, we did the same thing with the Georgia game. A lot of matchup based stuff, whether it be offense versus defense versus offense, some really intriguing matchups on both sides of the football. And so we're going to be diving into that a little bit, looking at the numbers. I love doing that, and kind of just seeing how these two teams compare, because it is, LSU's got the home field advantage, and it is a night game in Baton Rouge. So that's naturally going to play to their, to them. But I think Alabama, with some of the things that they can do well and some of the areas that LSU is exploitable, and we'll be talking about that more kind of throughout the week, I think Alabama can do some things to manage that crowd, but they have to do better than they did in Knoxville. And so that is something to kind of keep an eye on, because I thought there were some opportunities for Alabama, especially, Milroe and offensively against Tennessee's defense, that just Alabama did not take advantage of enough. So they have to improve on that front. But, they certainly can.
Well, it's going to be fun to hear from the coaches going into this game, a rivalry game against LSU. Bama over the years, though, has had success in Baton Rouge. And, you hope that they'll continue to have that. It is a night game, and that always makes it tough. But a lot of people feel like this is a playing game for both of these teams.
Loser's not going. That's what I know for sure.
Right.
There might be some discussion as far as the winner, but I think a lot of what happened this past weekend really positioned both teams where if you went out, you're probably in the college football playoff. And so, having the ability in a lot of ways to control your own destiny, even though it's not a guarantee, I think it is good, but it also means you have to be able to get the job done. And that's just something, whether it be from Alabama's perspective or from LSU's, we haven't seen the consistency enough, and we've got to see a little bit more, at least from Alabama's side, because the talent's there, the coaching staff certainly there. They have the pieces. They've just got to manage things a little bit better than we've seen up to this point.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear kind of just what they say about the matchup, how healthy the team is. I'm always looking for that. You had a couple of weeks off, although Jake Coker said that when he was at Alabama, the worst weeks were the bye weeks because Nick Saban was always harder during those weeks, which is pretty funny to think about too. But that'll be something else that I'll be interested in hearing and kind of getting a take on as well from them. All right, here's Coach Sheridan.
Hey, Nick. Obviously, Jalen had, a lot of success against LSU last year, kind of his coming out party. I'm curious about how have you seen him kind of approach this week? How have you, I guess, the 2 weeks kind of build up to such an important game, kind of on his end?
I think his approach has been just daily improvement. Being where your feet are. I think that's the message for everybody in the building is to just be where your feet are and focus on being the best you can be each and every day in practice and preparation. And then that's how you best prepare yourself to go play well on Saturday. So I don't think his approach has changed, in that regard. And I think it's been steady throughout the season, just his consistency and his routine and his preparation. I think that gives you the best chance to play well, in the game and have the most confidence headed into the game when, you lean back on your routines, your preparation, your training. And so I haven't seen that change based on the opponent, throughout this season, not just this week, but in previous weeks as well.
Hey, Coach, just with one of the biggest games of the year coming up this weekend, what's the advantages of having this bye where it's situated right now going into this week?
Well, I think it gives you an opportunity to maybe heal up a little bit. I think, the advantages are the same for both teams, obviously. So anytime you have a little bit of a time, to reflect, you can get healthy, you can identify things that you need to work on. You maybe get a hair bit more time, just a preparation for the opponent. But they're on the same schedule that we're on. And so, ultimately it'll be whoever used the time the best, prepared the best. And we're still right in the middle of that. These next few days certainly are important. The practices, the preparation, the finalizing of the plan from the staff. And so that'll really be the focus here the next few days. And so obviously, use the time to try to, help individuals get better, help your unit get better, help your team get better. And we're still, have preparation to be had here the next few days.
They rank at top 10 in sacks. Just what have you seen from their pass rush, and how do you kind of combat that? Without giving away too much of your gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they're very disruptive. I think that jumps off the film. The production of the front seven players, both the edges, linebackers, interior players, they have had a lot of success that way. And I think the way that you try to, counter that is similar no matter who you're going against, is to try to stay out of those situations that are pretty obvious passing situations where they really can pin their ears back and rush. And so being efficient and effective on first and second down will be important. Staying out of third and long situations will be important. I think that's the case anytime you're playing a very disruptive front, is to stay in situations that, make you unpredictable as far as run and pass and what you're trying to accomplish. And so, making sure that we're balanced and staying out of some of those situations where, it's friendly for good pass rushers. I think that'll be important for us.
Yeah, last open week, you guys then went into the Georgia game and had a really strong start. What do you want to replicate in terms of how guys are preparing and in terms of how they approach just starting the game?
Well, we always want to start fast. I think that's really important. Particularly when you're on the road. I think that is helpful. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anything that occurred in the past relative to previous bye weeks or previous games will have any impact on this one. But I would say, the importance of starting fast in a game is certainly important. Like I said, particularly when you're on the road and you're dealing with the crowd and those types of things, to be able to get off to a good start, I think is always beneficial, but certainly when you're on the road.
you kind of just answered what I was going to ask a little bit about playing on the road. Y'all played well on the road first game against Wisconsin, but not as well the last 2 games. Just kind of maybe what worked well in that Wisconsin game, and maybe what have been some of the struggles on the road that y'all are kind of hoping to move past this week.
Well, I think, pretty simply, we just played better. We executed better. We did a better job as coaches. And so certainly that's a point of emphasis, to execute and play cleaner. I think that you talk about some of the personnel that they have, some of the schemes that they have. When you can execute and do your job a little bit more consistently, sometimes you keep them out of those situations where the advantage goes to the defense. And so when you look at those opportunities we've had on the road, we need to play better. And I think that comes down to simple execution. I think making sure as a staff we're putting them in a position to play fast and play confident, because you are dealing with, other factors in the game, crowd noise, et cetera. So making sure that we keep it simple enough so our guys can execute and do their job, I think that'll be important.
Yeah, hey, Coach, you just mentioned crowd noise. What did you maybe learn from that Tennessee game that can help you guys going into the road game at Baton Rouge?
Yeah, that we need to be better. I think that's what, was evident. We obviously didn't start the game off the right way relative to the noise and the communication. We've continued to work on that, as a group, as a staff, to make sure that, what we're asking them to do in those moments, that they can execute it at a high level. And so I thought there were moments in the game the last time we were in an environment like this where we were fine, we settled in and were able to communicate, but certainly we didn't start the game off the way that we would like. And so, I think the message was to learn and grow from those experiences so that you can do better the next time you get in those environments and atmospheres.
Do you have any other questions for Coach Sheridan?
Okay, roll tide.
All right, there you go. First coach up. Didn't have a lot to say. Was kind of short for his normal weekly press conference.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I thought we got some stuff, and but it's like the typical stuff, right? I mean, you're facing off against an LSU defense that's been able to tee off on some people. I mean, Braden Swinson, one of the SEC sack leaders with 8 sacks. You've got Savion Jones. Like, they have been very productive as far as their pass rush, but that's been without Harold Perkins. Like, he hadn't been a part of that. So I think that's probably surprising to a lot of people. I think they have some vulnerabilities on the back end of their defense, but you've got to be able to give Jalen Milroe time to throw the football. And I think that, he mentioned it. We've talked about it a lot on this show. You've got to stay out of those third and obvious passing situations, or really just any obvious passing situations, because kind of just like South Carolina, when they're able to just pin their ears back and they know you're throwing the football, that's not the way your tackles aren't set up for it. I don't think your quarterback is set up for it. So you need to be able to try to avoid those situations as much as possible. That includes having success running the football, having success on early downs, avoiding penalties. So when you do have success, you don't put yourself back in a bad situation with a penalty. Just Alabama needs to play a clean game against LSU. And, they're certainly capable, but there's also been some signs where they've struggled with that, at least up to this point.
I'd like to see Alabama go in with some confidence like they had at the beginning of the Georgia game. Just get into a rhythm, get Milroe running. I love the comments over here. Hampton 1815 is like, yeah, that was a historically bad LSU defense. Yeah, they was. And that secondary got run over by Milroe. But it was also the game that Milroe started running the ball again. And I think he was hurt last year, and that's why he didn't run. I don't know if it's the same situation this year or not, but you got to get out and run the ball. That's part of what makes him dynamic. And it also makes it harder for the defense to figure out what you're going to do. You can also throw the ball better because they have to put somebody to watch you just to make sure you don't run. And also you could pretend you're going to run and then throw the ball. There's a lot of things that you can build off of being able to break a couple big runs.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I mean, and when you look at LSU's defense, I mean, they haven't been particularly great at stopping the run. I think they're just inside the top 50. Alabama, whether it be with Jalen Milroe, whether it be with their running backs, we've talked about getting that traditional run game going a little bit more. We saw that against Missouri. Really need to carry that momentum into Baton Rouge, because if you're able to do that, you're really going to compromise this LSU defense, and you're going to present opportunities in your passing game. Alabama has the guys to take advantage of a lot of that. And they got a quarterback that when he's on his game and playing good football, he can certainly take advantage of people with his arm too. Like, he is more than capable. But I think, with Georgia, they were pretty much having their way with that defense. They were letting them kind of pick their poison. Against Tennessee, it was anything but, whether it be penalties, whether it be, not having success running the football consistently enough, whether, and that was with Jalen Milroe and the running backs.
Right.
They've got to be able to do that sort of thing more consistently in this type of environment.
Yeah. I feel like they have to be more disciplined. And I think that is not just the penalties, but also, I guess it's all penalties, but just doing the dumb stuff, the fighting and all that. Then, all right, let's listen to Kane Wommack.
Have Coach make his opening statement, and then we'll take questions. Whenever you're ready, Coach.
Okay, looking back on the bye week, you always want to do a review, of kind of where you are, the things that you need to improve, and the things that you're doing well. I thought, coming out of the Missouri game, there were things that I think we are taking steps in the right direction. I think our players have a real emphasis to take the ball off of people right now. I think we've gotten 10 takeaways in the last 3 games, which is really encouraging. I'm seeing an emphasis in that from our coaches and players in practice, and those things are showing up on game day. I think, limiting explosive plays, certainly, we were able to do that, whatever that was, a week and a half ago. We gave up 4 explosives, and really 3 of those 4 were in the last series of the game, when we had some young guys in that gave up some explosive runs. And so we certainly got to get those things cleaned up. That was not nearly to the standard. We were fortunate to get a 4th down stop there at the end with some older guys that have a lot of pride and wanted to get back in the game. So, and then we had 15 explosives as an offense. And then I thought, 3rd downs, that's been an area that we've been deficient in. And I think we're taking steps in the right direction there. Some things that we're doing fundamentally, some things that we're doing schematically, just making tweaks so that we can give our players the best chance to be able to get people off the field and get the ball back to our offense. So looking into the bye week, those were things that we were able to do and kind of build off of from a momentum standpoint. I like the demeanor of our players right now. I think they're in a really good position. I think they are very hungry to get back out on the field. Some of them have done a tremendous job in getting their bodies healthy and bodies back. I think our training staff is the best in the country, the best that I've ever been around. And credit to our players and training staff for having a sense of urgency in the bye week to get ourselves in as healthy a position as we can heading into the last 4 games of the regular season and then beyond. So looking ahead to LSU, this is a very explosive football team. A lot of athletes that are on the field. I think Coach Kelly is obviously his resume speaks for itself, and the success that he's had at multiple places and the way that he manages his football team. Have a lot of respect for Joe Sloan, their offensive coordinator I've known for a number of years, and he's really done a great job kind of wherever he's been. And Frank Wilson was my position coach at one time in college, and a number of guys on their offensive staff that I think really do a really good job. And then from an offensive standpoint, I think, you can talk about the quarterback all day long. I think Nussmeier, he's a coach's kid. You can tell he's been very well trained, knows where to go with the ball, has great answers, is probably, to me up there, with the Carson Becks of the world in terms of his ability to see the field and make great decisions. He's as good as we've seen this year. Aggressive with the ball. I know sometimes that has gotten them in trouble, but it's also, created a lot of explosive plays that they've been able to make because he's aggressive. And certainly he's got players on the perimeter and in their tight end room that will go up and get the football. Even if guys are covered, he's going to throw the ball. And so we're going to have to make plays and contested catches and do a great job against an explosive team with a great quarterback, an awesome system, and one of the best environments, in college football. So be a great challenge for us, one that I think our players are certainly looking forward to on Saturday.
Yeah, Kane, do you think that the recent, momentum that this defense has is just a result of guys understanding your system better and just them developing, or what would you attribute it to?
I think, I think the answer is probably yes, in a number of facets. I think our guys, certainly there's going to be a learning curve, right? And some of the things that, that guys are understanding our system on a more dynamic level and recognizing, when to take chances and when not to take chances. I think that's a big piece of it. And then, you've got some guys that have experience and maybe they have experience in different systems, but then you have some guys that have little experience and they're starting to grow and learn. And so I like where we're headed. I think we are in a position to be able to continue to improve defensively and get better as the season goes on. I told our players this the other day. I mean, look at college football right now. I mean, right now it's hard for everybody. Winning is hard in the SEC. It always has been, but I would argue now more than ever, finding ways to get better as a football team ultimately is going to make the difference in the last part of the season here in terms of who is considered a successful football team. And so I think we're trending in the right direction there, but long way to go in some areas.
Far left, Chase.
Kyron Lacey's been pretty explosive for LSU. He had a big game against A&M a couple weeks ago, even though they lost. What do you see in his talent, and how do you try to contain that guy?
Yeah, I remember Kyron, excuse me, when he was in the Sun Belt. He was playing at Louisiana my first year as the head coach at South Alabama. And then I think he transferred maybe the year after in 2022. Long physical presence, does a great job with the ball in the air. I think he makes contested catches. I think he's grown so much as a route runner and really, someone that you can tell that Nussmeier really trusts to get the ball to, even in, situations where he's got body on body to go make a play for him. So very impressed with his skill set. I mean, he's got all the tools and can run and make contested catches and the makings of a great receiver.
Right up in the middle here, Mike. Microphone comes to you.
Seems like Jordan Renaud's played a bigger role lately. Just what does he bring to the table, and how do you decide when to put him on the field versus LT or Jamarian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about Jordan Renaud. There's a number of young guys that I'm excited about, but that's certainly one to point towards. I think, Jordan is continuing to defense and understanding what to do. We talk about those things, right? Knowing when to take chances, when to take risks, all that goes on the back end, that goes up front. And then just doing your job at a more consistent level than maybe where he was at the beginning of the season. Credit him. I mean, you've got two players, and Jamarian Latham and LT Overton that are playing good football right now. And so for him to elevate his game to be in the conversation and find ways, for us to have to find ways to get him on the field, I think speaks to who he is and the work that he's put in. But also, I think dude's got a really bright future.
All the way back,
Coach, the last time you guys walked off the field, it was a shutout. How does that carry over? And what's your message to the guys? Just to take pieces, or do you flush it?
Well, I think I think one of the cool things about that shutout was the way in which it was done. I thought our older players, we were literally having to hold them back in that last drive, right, to not, want to go out on the field and preserve a shutout. I think that's awesome when a group of defensive players have pride and wanting to get stops. And certainly they've gone through adverse situations. We have as a team, we have as a defense, but knowing that at the end of the day, it's not okay to give up touchdowns. It's not okay, you know what I mean, at any point, right, to give up scores and yards and all those things. And so I thought that was a great momentum builder for our players to know, hey, one, we were able to get a shutout, we were able to get the stop, but also I thought it was a real opportunity for some older players and coaches to be able to demand the standard out of some younger players that we are going to have to count on, as the season goes. We've already counted on some of those players due to injuries. So I think certainly anytime you can get a shutout, especially in the SEC, I think you can build off of that momentum.
Go to Tony here in the second row on the left.
What have you seen from their tackle tandem? And then also, I think A&M was probably the first team to really exploit them. What can you kind of learn off of the A&M game to maybe replicate that?
Well, I think I think A&M they do a great job on defense. I mean, schematically they're really good. Their personnel up front is as good as I've seen. I mean, those guys are do a really good job in one-on-one matchups, and I thought they did a great job of finding and creating one-on-one matchups based off of how they situated their personnel and were able to win. A number of those one-on-ones, and so that'll be the challenge for us. I thought they did some really good things that that you can look at and say, okay, how does that fit what we do, and then kind of build off of it from there. But you kind of take little pieces from everybody. I thought, you look, Ole Miss played them really well for the vast majority of the game, and then just couldn't seem to get off the field at the end. I think having both personnel groupings based off of the groupings that they have on the field. They've got a lot of different things that they do out of their personnels with 12 and different tight end groupings that come on the field, and then also things from a scheme standpoint to be able to have answers against a very prolific offense. I think is going to be critical at the end.
Hey, Kane. We saw a little bit of what Quay Russaw could do with a little bit of
Who's that?
Quay Russaw.
Quay.
When he was a little bit healthier and kind of saw the flashes, saw those moments. How has he been able to kind of cement himself as a Wolf linebacker? What does he do that kind of you want out of that position?
Well, it's really the Wolf is a really dynamic position. I mean, you ask a lot out of really kind of both the edge player to the field and to the boundary, the husky, the nickel position for us in terms of what they do from a coverage perspective, but fitting in the box and blitzing off the edge and playing different man and zone oriented coverages. And then to the boundary, right, that Wolf position. I mean, you're asking that guy to play a 5 technique and a 9 technique to be able to slant down inside into the interior B gaps or A gaps, to fold back inside in the run fit at times, to drop out in coverage, to cover backs and tight ends out of the backfield. So it's a very dynamic skill set. Quay is strong at the point of attack. He's got enough athleticism to be able to make space tackles. And so really, he has all the physical traits for a good Wolf, but more so, right, the guy has really taken ownership in terms of what to do schematically and how he fits within the framework of the defense. And I think he's really probably taken a lot of steps in terms of growth to, answer, Nick's question earlier there, like players that are growing within, the framework of what we're doing defensively. You could certainly point to Quay Russaw on taking steps in the right direction.
Jump back to the right, go to Matt.
I was curious about your thoughts and how do you think defensive coaches across the league kind of feel about the order from the league to kind of knock off with the fake injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, ultimately, when you are in a situation where you are hurt in a game and you have to go down, you can't come off the field when these offenses are going too fast. They're watching your sideline. They're aware of if all of a sudden that you try to make a personnel change when you don't have the iron cross by the officials. And so I think the rule is still the rule, right? But you have some of these instances, right, that they're maybe trying to crack down on, and ultimately it doesn't really change what we're telling our guys. Our guys need to understand that if they're hurt in a game, never come off the field. You always have to go down in that situation so that we can make the proper substitution for that player.
Go to the left here, third row.
You mentioned that Nussmeier is an aggressive player, but at times he has disadvantages. What have you seen on film that you believe this defense could limit him at times?
Well, I think I think he is an aggressive player, right? And sometimes you live by the sword and die by the sword a little bit. And we're a team that is certainly going to be focused on taking the ball off of people, and we've got to be able to show enough looks and pictures and change some things up, and put eyes on the quarterback and play man coverage and do all the different things to be able to create some confusion that we've been able to create with some really good quarterbacks. We were able to do that, even looking back to Carson Beck, who is a great quarterback and has had a hard time, hasn't turned the ball over very much. But I think if you can find creative ways to give them different looks and pictures, right, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to take the ball away. But at the same time now, I mean, this dude, has made a lot of plays being the guy he is. He's an aggressive player. I mean, you think about, Brett Favre threw a lot of picks in his career, but he also made a hell of a lot of plays, right? And this guy has really done some similar things in that regard. And so some of that you live with a little bit as an offense, but from a defensive perspective, we need to make sure that taking the ball off of people is really the identity of who we are as a defense. And so that needs to show up on Saturday night.
Got 2 questions left. Let's start with you, G.
Coach, you said that you like the demeanor that you're seeing from some of your players. Can you go into a little more detail about what you're seeing and from who?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think for me, I think our players have learned from the experiences that they've had this season, and there is a sense of urgency to get better every single day and not waste reps in practice. And so for our guys to have that understanding of, okay, I did this early in the season in practice, and this showed up on game day, be it from a positive standpoint or from an area where we have to get better. And so I think our players are drawing upon those positive and negative experiences to have better practice habits. And then I think some of those practice habits are showing up on game day, and our coaches are doing a really good job of pointing those things out, that ultimately you're going to get rewarded by what you put out on the field. And so, somebody I saw a quote the other day of something about the success that you want is in the work that you are avoiding. You know what I mean? And so the work that you're willing to put in, right, is going to reap the result of success that ultimately you want. And so are our players willing to do that day in and day out when it gets hard at the end of the season? I think right now our guys got a really good demeanor about that.
Talked a lot about the explosive plays and the receivers they have, but how tough is it as a coordinator when they've got Mason Taylor at the tight end position who they can really go to in crunch time?
Yeah.
What does he do for them?
I think he is as good a tight end as we've seen this year. I mean, I think you can tell their quarterback trusts him. I mean, another guy that when the game is on the line, he continues to show up in those big moments. He will make contested catches. Just even being body on body, the guy can make those contested, type throw and catch, which is ultimately what is hard about covering a tight end, right? You've got some 6'6" guy that you're covering with a linebacker or a defensive back that ultimately, a good quarterback's going to throw away from leverage and he's going to be able to come down with the ball. And so I think the dude, takes pride, obviously, in not coming off the field. You can tell that's kind of a thing, right? They constantly are keeping him on the field and having different groupings and packages around him. But, tight ends, man, the when you have a good tight end that can do things in the run game well enough and then ultimately be dynamic in the passing game, that's why those guys are so valuable, in the professional league right now, because they're rare, but they're really hard to defend, for a number of reasons. So we'll have our work cut out for us. All right. Thanks, guys. Roll Tide.
All right, Roll Tide. There's Kane Wommack. Thought he did a pretty good job in the press conference, Clint.
Yeah, they asked him a few more questions. I think people, and it's just a different way. I mean, right? Nick Sheridan doesn't like sharing a whole lot. He's really not going to. Kane Wommack, a little bit of a different approach. Both ways are fine. Maybe not from a fan's perspective. Maybe they want to hear a little bit more, but Wommack just, great answers, talking about Jordan Renaud, talking about Garrett Nussmeier, Kyren Lacey. LSU's got some playmakers within their offense, and they're going to turn the football over. Garrett Nussmeier has kind of proven that. He's kind of a gunslinger. Doesn't affect him at all. So if you think you're going to really get in his head, get another thing coming. Let's hear from Kalen DeBoer.
All right, sounds good.
All right, good morning. Had a great bye week. Our guys get a chance to work on the things that we felt we needed to work on as a team, get a little healthier and in a good spot. Guys got back to work yesterday with a good practice, high energy, very intentional on what the job is that we're up against going into LSU here, and getting a head start on that, whether it be last week or yesterday. So we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, and got an exciting week. Preparing for a good football team. So one update, just want to give because I know I haven't had a chance to, just with the timing of everything. With when we've met Cole Adams with his injury, just an update there. He'll be out for the year. So we had to deal with that, and last week, and unfortunately, just because Cole's guy that pours everything into it, had an injury earlier in the season. Honestly, at the time, probably thought that was going to be something more significant as far as the time frame with the first one. Just seeing the effort he put into that first injury, you really found out a lot about who he was as a person, as a player, just the toughness he had, and unfortunately, he had another injury here now, and lower body injury, and so we'll be done with the season here this year. Questions?
Start with Charlie on the far right.
Just with Cole, and you also have Jalen out. Just what do you do from a receiver standpoint to kind of, I guess, replenish that depth?
Yeah, and the season has the flows, right? The guys that are in, the guys that are out. A couple weeks ago, we had multiple guys out with K-Law and Kobe, and that's where Cole got more playing time as well as some others, and so again, unfortunately, we aren't at full strength there, but just much like most of the teams across the country are. So you're shorthanded, but you mix and match, and you continue to find the versatility in guys and put them into spots, and coach them up. And there's a lot of cross training that happens within positions, and receivers one of them. So guys that can play inside and outside both, we're going to utilize them to the fullest potential. But it's always all hands on deck, especially this time of the year.
Chase on the far left.
What were your thoughts about the edict from the SEC on Friday with the penalties for defenses faking injuries, and how much do you think faking injuries really impacts the integrity of the game?
Well, I guess the rules have been the rules, and so just having to find another level of enforcement, I think, and seriousness about it is what's happening here. And so from our end, I already talked to our players, our staff. It doesn't change what we do, because we go about it, and if you are hurt, and you need to stay down, especially if it's substitutions that need to be made. You need to be looked at, but you can put yourself in some tough positions if you really truly are hurt, and that's I really feel like with what our team does and how we operate, how it's going to continue to be. So I've been on the other end where there's situations at the end of the game or whatever it might be that get a little frustrating, and that can happen at any time. But the rules have been the rules, and so we'll just continue to go about business as we always have here in our program.
Yeah, now that you know that Cole's out for the year, do you want to have just one punt returner, or how do you want to handle that position moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, you will go with who you feel best about. Obviously, we need to continue to always build depth. Said this at the beginning of the year to our special teams, coordinator with Jay Nunez. He does a great job, but also just in developing returners. It isn't just your upperclassmen that you can do it, you have confidence in, but it's also developing younger guys. And you have seen just as much as anyone has that we have younger guys that we've been putting out there with Bach and Ryan, and we need to continue to develop more and more. Not just for today, not just for the next couple of games or the rest of the season, but also for the future, years to come. And so, just over and over, you just can't catch enough kicks, punts, and then all the situations that come along with it. When to field it, when to fair catch it. The communication that happens, just being comfortable back there. It's reps and reps and reps of that. And so we're going to always continue to develop more and more guys. And, kind of who you've been seeing is who we'll start out with Bach and Ryan. But, whether we pick just one or the other, I think there's also pieces with the flow of the game, and just things like that might dictate, or even a situational call that we want to where we have a certain guy out there.
Jump back over to the left, Katie.
Nick just talked about the importance of starting fast on the road. Vanderbilt, it was a pick six first offensive possession, Tennessee 3 and out. So just in general on offense on the road, how important is it to start fast, and then specifically kind of with this game this weekend?
Yeah, certainly. And that's something we're always preaching. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, in those two games, we haven't done that. And there's been a lot of, in the Vanderbilt game, I think we quickly got going, had success. You just can't dig yourself a hole, especially given the opponent a momentum in an environment like we're going to see at LSU. So it's critical. We preach it every day. We try to even set up our practice to where we do start fast, whether it's offense or defense. And, we didn't get that done the last two road games, as you mentioned. So always an emphasis on that, but really it comes back to not really, the guys are trying. It's just a matter of, doing things that you do well, going out there and executing.
Stay on the same row as go to Colin.
Hey, Kalen, I'm curious what you've seen out of Elijah Pritchett at right tackle recently. It seems like from our perspective that he struggled a little bit from that position. How have you seen him kind of handle the last off week, and how comfortable do you feel about the right tackle position right now?
Yeah, I think Elijah's got a ton of potential, and a lot of things that he's grown in. There's always the areas, and at this time of the year, there's enough film on someone to where teams attack you certain ways, and whether we're talking about the tackle position or it could be anywhere, defensive back, defensive line, you put on film as a team, as an individual, the things that opponents are going to look at. And so he's continuing to work hard every single day. I mean, it just he comes out to practice, he's competitive. I feel like his growth has been kind of proven over the year. I think there's a consistency to him that is higher than what it was at the beginning or even the middle of the season. And that's what you're looking for. That's all you can ask in your players, is that they continue to grow, they can continue to improve, and he's doing that. And we'll continue to help him as coaches. That's our job.
All the way back right.
Hey, Coach. Many people believe this one on Saturday must win for Alabama. What's your approach? This is why you come to Alabama for games like this, and what's been the attitude with you going into a game where there's really not a lot of wiggle room left this season?
Yeah, and that's you saw our response, I think, with the Missouri game, because really that was the case there. And I say that, and then all of a sudden you start thinking, well, why wasn't that the case when we went to Tennessee? Well, it was. It's just more experiences that you have together. The backs of the wall. There's different things that different teams respond well to, and at least for the first test, and Missouri was at home. We got off to a fast start defensively, did a nice job there, and just continued to apply pressure, I think, offensively. And once we got the field position in our favor, we kind of cracked through. But for us, it's just always going back to really the process and the work that needs to be put in, the areas we needed to continue to improve on, and the guys. I use the word intentional a lot, whether it's here, whether it's with our team. We have to be intentional, and we got to bring that energy in order to really continue to improve. And they're doing that, and they want to make something big of this season, and it's supported through the action that you see on the practice field. You see it in just the way they're going about their business off the field. Just the details that really continue to hone in on. And it's just a matter of time, right? As the season goes on, you become more comfortable with what we're doing, whether it's our scheme or just the routine or each other. And a lot of our youth is rising up and continuing to gain more and more confidence, mixed in with the veterans that continue to bring great leadership. So I like where we're at. Unfortunately, like you said, we have less wiggle room. And our backs are to the wall, and so we're going to fight each and every day, bite, scratch, and claw, like you've never seen, and that continues on this week.
Coach, on the other side of a bye week, what indicators are you looking for in your team that lets you know it was productive and that their mindset is in the right place for a game like LSU?
You're talking about like this week? Yeah, I think last week and this week is a great indication. I guess this week I'm talking about yesterday's practice. Ton of energy. There was a purpose, just very deliberate in how we went out there. There's emotion and there's energy, but it's really focused on the right things. And the leaders. What I challenge our team to do is not just have the leaders that have been the leaders step up, but have at this point a team full of leaders. We can't have these freshmen aren't freshmen. The new guys that come into this program aren't just new guys anymore. This is our team, and that's been the message, but really for them to all raise their game as leaders. That means accountability for themselves, ourselves, each individually, and then also bring someone else with you. And that's been the challenge the last couple of weeks, and I continue to kind of hone in on that.
All right, we're going to finish up with Tony here on the left.
What have you seen from Robbie Utes, and how big is his ability to kind of handle some of that dirty work that maybe goes unnoticed on offense?
Yeah, and he does some things on special teams too with Robbie. He's just a really versatile guy, becoming more versatile when it comes to special teams and offense. I think he's one of those guys that when you talk about the reps that you've had now in our offense and how we teach things, and just getting used to the locations that we're going to put him as I guess a tight end, but even in a fullback role, the spots that we put him all over on the field, the reps have helped him really develop and grow. And now you see him not just going out there and trying to execute what's on paper and what the play is supposed to be, but he's actually going out there and making plays. I think the first play or early in the game, we went right to him, and just like it was second nature for him, to run the route, to catch the ball, to, get vertical and, run through people like he's used to doing. And he's a guy that our team looks to because he's very just unselfish. Will do whatever it takes for our football team to be successful. And that happens through his effort, happens through his attitude. You can just see it. And he's a pleasure to have on our football team, pleasure to coach. Okay, thank you. Roll Tide.
All right, there he is. Coach DeBoer finished up the press conference. Guys, thank you for hanging out with us here on Cover Crimson. Remember, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code next round, like my helmet on my shirt. I'll get it right. There it is. Everything's opposite from what I see. Like I see it on here, but I'm really over here, my mind. But anyway, mybookie.ag, use the promo code next round. You feel like Bama is going to cover that 2.5 point spread in Death Valley? Go find out and put your wager down at mybookie.ag. And again, the promo code is next round. And great to see all you guys in the comments section. And thanks for hanging out with us, Clint Lamb and Mick Gillispie. Clint, your thoughts on what Kalen DeBoer said and really any of the coaches today?
Unfortunate news about Cole Adams. I'll kind of start there. I don't think one of the things that we said about this team going into the year was it kind of lacked the outside options, the established outside options. And I know what you're laughing at, by the way. You go ahead. This is
your video.
I was wondering when,
see if anybody noticed.
I've been wanting to say something the entire show.
Yeah. Good buddy. It's like buddy grow a mustache, buddy.
If I could handle a mean mustache, mine it might look a little red in the camera, but it's blonde. So I mean, if I shaved the beard, I couldn't pull it off like you.
Man, I wanted to do this for a while, but big sexy Elmo kept on telling me not to do it. He's like, you look like a porn star.
Oh man, yeah.
Let's start that over again. Clint, tell me about the injury situation at Alabama, please.
Anyway, what I will say about the Cole Adams injury that's really unfortunate is it's a big deal as far as special teams. And Kalen DeBoer talked about it. Like, you've seen two true freshmen as the punt returners in Jalen Mbakwe and Ron Williams. And they're young players. They're going to make mistakes. And going into Baton Rouge, like, of course, that's something that you're going to think about or worry about. Ron Williams has handled pressure extremely well. I think Jalen Mbakwe, for the most part, on defense, has handled things extremely well. But kind of being a punt returner, it comes with a lot of pressure. When you talk about the slot stuff, it's like we said going into the year, Alabama kind of lacked the outside options. When Jalen Hill went down, he was one of your pure outside guys. You can also play him inside, but we thought he would be a big presence on the outside for Alabama. And they've established some guys, done some really good things there. Ryan Williams is winning on the outside. Jeremy Bernard, Kendrick Law has been playing a lot on the outside, but they have a lot of guys who can slide inside and play in the slot. Kobe Prentice has kind of been viewed primarily as a slot guy. Kendrick Law can do it. Bernard's played some slot. Ryan Williams has played a little bit more slot throughout the season. So I'm not really overly concerned about the depth when it comes to being at receiver. It's more of the punt return aspect of things.
All right, Clint. I'm just trying not to laugh reading the comments over here. Patrick wants to know if I drew the mustache on with Sharpie, and then Steven says I'll be clean shaven next episode.
Is he right? Will you be clean? I mean, you
Probably.
want
I don't know. I don't know. Basically, I didn't have a chance to really grow it out as long as I want to. Not to distract you guys, but it takes me a good, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. I just grow the whole thing and then I cut out, But
no shave November can be confined to just the mustache. And how about we do it this way? Keep it this week. If Alabama beats LSU, you keep the stash until Alabama loses.
Okay. Yeah. Roll Tide, guys. Nicholas, thank you, brother. Just a regular old Roll Tide. Didn't have. Hey, we love you guys, though, man. And thank you for being here at Cover Crimson. If you like the mustache, give us a thumbs up on there. If you don't like the mustache, give us a thumbs up on there. Yeah, it's just a way of saying Roll Tide. Oh, my goodness. So we don't have Cole Adams for the rest of the year. That's disappointing because I really felt like he was one of those guys who was getting better by the week. I liked his hands. He's good at the kick return game. So Alabama doesn't have him. You talk about the slot, and then you look at this team to me, and I was kind of crunching through the numbers yesterday and looking at the wide receiver contributions. And, outside of the 7 touchdowns that Williams has scored, there's not many other guys in that wide receiver room have gotten into the end zone. And I feel like that's an area that can change a lot just because I feel like Bernard's been a guy who is starting to feel like he's breaking out.
Well, Bernard is one. It's like he's done some really good things. I really think his role has increased throughout the season. I mean, I say throughout the season. I mean, it's been pretty much from week 2. He didn't get a lot of targets in week 1. I think that was just a product of, how things worked out in that particular game. I think he only got 1 target, but since then he's been steadily, 5 or 6 targets a game, doing some really good things with every time he touches the football. But we hadn't scored a lot, only 2 touchdowns the entire season. That can change at a moment's notice. A lot of Alabama's explosives, a lot of them came early and they went to Ryan Williams. They've kind of struggled at times with the explosives in recent weeks. But, I think also when you get down there near the goal line, because they've been so efficient with Jalen Milroe's legs, you've got 2 hammer backs. It's like, okay, if we're not getting these guys a ton of touches, at least let's get them some touchdowns. So when you're down there near the goal line, you want to run the football. And I guess that's kind of evidenced by the fact that in Knoxville, Jalen Milroe tries to throw the fade down there on the, what were they on, like the 2-yard line or 3-yard line, and throws an interception. So it's like, hey, you got a nice little 3-headed monster with power backs. If you include Jalen Milroe, should probably use them in those situations. So that's going to kind of limit things, but they've gotten production out of the wide receiver position. That really doesn't worry me. It's really, the blocking out on the perimeter has been phenomenal. Kendrick Law has been that guy pretty much all year. I think Jeremy Bernard's really come along. I think Ryan Williams, he's not overly big. He's not consistent enough at it, in my opinion, right now. But what I will say is that he's been more effective as a blocker than you would think for a guy who's 170 pounds. He's not Devontae Smith by any means, at least not right now on that front, but he's a scrappy blocker. Manuel Henderson has been surprisingly good at it. So they've had some players who have gotten out, after some people, as far as whether it be in the quick passing game or, in the run game out there on the perimeter. But this wide receiver room, you want to kind of see it come alive. And against this LSU defense, I think there will be some opportunities.
All right, Adam, thank you for the super chat. And that leads into the video that I put on my channel, Bama Tailgate, on YouTube, about Milroe. I just heard a few people that I've talked to said it's not a sure thing in their mind that Milroe is going to the NFL because of the fact that Milroe has diminished stock. Now, there's 4 games left, so a lot can change. But he went from being number 1 on the Heisman, odds to not even on there, okay? And then he was like 1 or 2 in the NFL draft quarterback-wise, and he slid all the way down to where some guys are saying he's 6 or below. And then you're hearing where he's got another year of eligibility. And I just did a video today, Clint, where I was talking about, if he comes back, it's not just coming back now. You got a quarterback room that's pretty deep, and they've been expecting him to leave. I don't know if he's going to. I still think he's going to leave, but it was worth talking about. Adam obviously wants him to leave with his comment. Your opinion on what Adam says here, and do you think there's any chance that he comes back?
I mean, I definitely think there's a chance. I don't think anybody needs to rule that out, whether you want to hear that or not. I mean, a lot would depend on, what type of feedback he gets. I mean, we still got, 4 games left in the regular season, plus you got postseason play. Let's get through a little bit of that before we start worrying about whether he does or doesn't come back. I mean, if this guy goes on a tear over the next, 4 or 5 games and he throws, 25 touchdowns in 4 weeks, I mean, everybody will be singing a different tune, right? So, I mean, that's not going to happen, but also I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff or anything. He's going to be a huge liability. But what I will say, Carson Beck's not playing great football right now, guys. I mean, he's got like 11 interceptions in 5 SEC games, or at least in his last 5 SEC games. Like, I think Kane Wommack going into that game against Georgia, Wommack during his press conference was talking about how Carson Beck has really avoided the turnovers or whatever, and they were able to get 4 off of him, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble. And it's like, I don't know if you've been paying attention, Kane. Probably not, because it's like, okay, we'll worry about Georgia once Georgia pops back up on the schedule if they do. But he's been struggling big time on the turnover front. Garrett Nussmeier, he turns the football over a lot. Gunslinger, Sam Darnold was that way, and he continued to be that way on the NFL level. He's finally starting to pick up a little bit more steam, but he's going to turn the football over a lot. So it's not like anybody's really stepping up. I think Shedeur Sanders obviously is going to be in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other guys who are playing pretty good football who I think are going to climb. But I mean, I think right now with Milroe's skill set, it is such a unique skill set. A quarterback, NFL franchises, their coaching staffs and what they think they can do with the quarterback position. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they still viewed him as a first-round pick, even though I also think it's very possible, like I said, based off Anthony Richardson's struggles, Trey Lance, and the fact that he hadn't really panned out, I wouldn't be shocked at all also if he was not viewed as a day 1 pick. And if that ends up being the case, I mean, it's possible he could be back. It's possible that he could, pull a Jalen Hurts and finish his career somewhere else. I mean, I would not take anything off the table. So I just don't really think there's no point in worrying about any of that stuff right now because it's not in front of us. What I will say right now is the focus needs to be on beating LSU. That's what matters.
I think he's going to be fine. There's probably some thought in his camp that coming back, if things don't improve, is his best option. But I think he's going to turn it around. I mean, we saw him starting to break out of it against Missouri. And if there's any truth to someone in his camp told him that he needs to stay in the pocket more, someone in his camp needs to not tell him to stay in the pocket more. He needs to just run. I mean, because it opens up the entire field for him to throw the football. But it's not like this guy doesn't have talent. I'm sorry. He has a ton of talent. But part of his ability is that he is an incredible runner. And he's as good as any runner that Alabama has. So he's got to run to kind of pull the defense out of position and then throw over top of them. I hope that happens. He had his best game last year against LSU, I thought. It was just amazing, like how effective he was running, how he threw the ball. He's just going to have to duplicate that this week. So, but we'll keep an eye on it, man. I mean, I am keeping an eye on this situation. I mean, if things don't improve and it keeps going the direction that it is right now, who knows what his draft stock's going to look like. But that with that position, you mentioned some of those other guys. It's not like there's a Peyton Manning in there, where it's like, hey, this is the sure number 1 guy. I mean, it's you could pick apart any of those guys. So, being a quarterback and getting drafted, Anthony Richardson, I know saw some of you guys in the comment section, was terrible at Florida, in my opinion, and he was still drafted in the 1st round. And I think Milroe is much better than him. So, yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But just something that I heard, when you talk to people all the time and they talk to people and you feel comfortable with some of your sources, and it's like, that could be a question that they're asking themselves right now because it is a business now. I mean, look, he's making $2 million at Alabama. So, I mean, if you're going to get drafted late and not make that much money, why wouldn't you come back? So, and if Bama didn't want him, somebody else would take him. So he'd be like Jalen Hurts, pop up at Oklahoma and contend for a Heisman. But there's so many things that can come off of that. But let's get back to the press conference. Thanks for the question, guys, and great to see all of you guys in the comments section. So what else did you glean from just the conversations? Didn't seem like Sheridan said a whole lot, but I felt like Wommack, who was a former head coach, he rips these apart every week. He's an excellent press conference giver, speaker. And then Kalen DeBoer seemed to be talking about relying on this senior class and the leadership to take advantage of this opportunity that they have in front of them.
Yeah, that's huge. And one of the interesting things about, that they keep bringing up Carson Beck, and just the performance. It's like Nussmeier's a different bird than Carson Beck. I mean, even though Carson Beck has thrown a lot of interceptions, he's not really. I still don't view him as like the gunslinger type. I just think he's in a rut right now, and just not playing good football. He's not seeing it well. Nussmeier is one of those where it's like he's going to take a lot of chances, and some of those are going to pay off. You're going to see some explosives. If you're an Alabama fan with the vulnerabilities in the secondary, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I would be floored if you didn't see multiple explosive downfield plays from LSU. What's key to me, in my opinion, is take advantage of the fact that Nussmeier's also going to give you some. Bring him in. Alabama hadn't always done that, but they've been way better at that as of late. But when he throws a football that you can get your hands on, you get your hands on it. He's going to go out there. It's not going to affect him whatsoever. He's going to go out there still slinging it. And he can throw 4 interceptions, and he's still going out there thinking he can, I can right this ship and throw 5 touchdowns and everything be okay. So you just got to keep playing football. Keep turning it over, like I said, when you get the opportunities. But I mean, when you look at this Alabama defense, Kane Wommack talked about it, 10 turnovers in the last 3 games. They've had 14 in 5 SEC games. That's almost 3 per game. That's really strong. And that, I think, is going to be absolutely critical. They've, really the only SEC game that they didn't generate any turnovers was against Vanderbilt, and they lost that game. And, the offense didn't do anything with the turnovers that they were given against Tennessee. And they started off not doing anything with the early turnovers against Missouri or turnover against Missouri. But the defense has to be able to get the offense those extra opportunities, and the offense has to be able to capitalize. When the defense puts you in a favorable situation, you're in plus territory. It's kind of guaranteed 3 points with the possibility of 7. You've got to, be able to. One thing I will say about LSU's defense is, they will let you score when you get into the red zone. And so Alabama's, and that's something that's going to be huge in this game, in my opinion, as well. LSU's offense has been pretty good as far as the red zone scoring, but you got to try to limit them in their home stadium to field goals as much as possible. If they get those explosive plays on you, okay, bend but don't break. Let's hold them to a field goal. Score touchdowns when you get your opportunities, whether it's your offense driving the football down the field or it's your defense putting you in favorable situations. Like I said, I started this whole thing saying Garrett Nussmeier is going to get some explosive plays downfield. I almost guarantee it. But I also can almost guarantee that Alabama is going to get, hopefully, multiple. I think bare minimum 1. But if you can get, 2-3 turnovers, I think that's great. That really kind of offsets that. But you've got to capitalize when you do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I feel like the thing to me, Clint, and we kind of talked about it before the press conferences, is discipline. This team's just got to be more disciplined. The false start penalties, the holding penalties, the personal foul penalties. Alabama teams that go on the road and have success don't make a lot of those type of mistakes.
Yeah, you've got to avoid that as much as you can. Right now, for you, Mick, what would you say is your biggest concern? Like, is it the discipline? Is that what you say would be like? With the fact that, especially that they're on the road, like obviously the discipline wasn't there against Tennessee, and I think that was a major problem. It really hindered Alabama's offense from getting anything going, because anytime they would get, something, maybe it would be the start of a drive, or maybe they do have something going, it would be like a penalty puts them in a bad situation, and they can't overcome it, and then they got to punt the football. Would discipline and the penalties probably be your number one concern?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm already not always a fan of the play calling, and I'm with some of you guys that say that we need to run the damn ball. I agree with that. Because what happens is that they put Milroe in a very vulnerable situation when he's dropping back and it's, second long and third and long because they haven't been able to pick up positive yards on first down. And then you add those penalties in there. Sometimes they pick up the yards, but then there's a penalty and then they're going back the other direction. For Alabama to have success or any team to have success, you got to cut those penalties out. And the personal foul penalties, the bad behavior stuff, that has to stop too. I put them all in the same basket and go, let's get disciplined. Let's get disciplined. Let's all get on the same page. It's loud in there. We know that, but we went to Tennessee. It's going to be loud in Baton Rouge. Let's go take care of that. I think if Alabama takes care of the penalties and they cut those down, then the other thing to me is Milroe's got to run the football. I said that before. The offensive line should be better because, we felt like Roberts was probably hurt, banged up, playing through it. And if he's healthy or if he's just feeling a lot better than he's been feeling, then I think that the offensive line will do a better job. But they've got to block. Pritchett can't whiff on guys and let them hit Milroe blindside. I think that those things go with Milroe running, because when Milroe's running the ball, you can come sprinting around that corner, and then he's going the other way at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you're not going to catch him, and you're going to get tired when you're that big. When you see those big guys chasing after Milroe, they are a lot slower getting to the ball, getting back after him the next play. And Alabama's got the ability to go fast just like any other team. But those are the two things to me, the discipline and then Milroe running the football. I believe that Milroe is a good quarterback. I mean, I saw it against Georgia. It was like 3% of his passes were off target, which is like an amazing number. Then against Tennessee, it's like over 17%, which is terrible. He's just got to get back to running the ball and being confident. And I know that he can do that. And I think if Alabama can kind of figure out that discipline thing, that the rest of it's going to fall into place.
Yeah, I think for Milroe, the number one thing above everything else is you have to be able to protect the football.
Yeah.
If you can do nothing else, you have to protect the football. Don't lose the turnover battle. I think your defense is going to get you some. I think, I was talking about this earlier. I started to talk about it at least. With Carson Beck, one of the things that really gave him trouble, and I think other teams saw this, other defenses saw this, and they've been, using it against him since then, is just showing different pictures pre and post snap, showing zone and then switching to man, showing pressure, and then you drop a bunch of guys out, a lot of different looks, make him not only think, make him dissect pre-snap, and then post-snap make him process everything that you're actually throwing at him. With Nussmeier and the fact that he will take a lot of chances, he'll trust himself sometimes and what he's seeing when he's not really, it's not what he's actually being given. And he'll decide something pre-snap and he'll take that shot or that opportunity, and you can really bait him into some turnovers. But, and when you look at Alabama's defense, number 6 in the turnover battle as far as the number of turnovers generated this season in the entire country, LSU's defense has not been overly great at it. I think they're ranked outside the top 50. They're not terrible. I think 12 turnovers, but, Alabama's got to avoid turnovers on the road. And then I think you have to apply pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. Like that's what everybody keeps talking about, but you've got to understand with Emory Jones and Will Campbell, I don't think they've been as good as I anticipated going into the year, but it's still one of the best tackle tandems in all of college football. And they'll both probably end up being first-round draft picks, maybe even top 15 picks before it's all said and done. And so, those earning the right to get up to the quarterback and then pinning your ears back, that'll be tougher against that tackle tandem. I think you've got to apply interior pressure. Get Deontay Lawson involved. Get Jahad Campbell as an off-ball guy. Really, last year we saw a lot of, off-ball blitzes against Carson Beck. We saw them be pretty aggressive. I think like 14 pressures total, a couple of sacks, but then also, how many of those pressures led to turnovers from Carson Beck? I think it's got to be a similar game plan, but you can't probably expect to win a lot outside. So whether it's, some of your interior guys, maybe it's playing LT Overton in the, inside a little bit more, Jamari Latham. They've got to be able to apply pressure and then, bring probably some added pressure from your off-ball linebackers.
I think LSU has some of the best wide receivers in the SEC. What is it? Kyron Lacey? He's so good, man. Lacey, man, he makes so many plays. And then I thought this, Clint, you and I, we talked about this in the past when Nick Saban was talking about guys that transferred out. And he was like, there was one guy that we didn't want to transfer out. And I thought it was the other wide receiver at LSU. I just have a feeling that that's the guy he didn't want to leave. And Anderson, who's actually put up great numbers this year. I mean, you look at him and he's right there with Lacey, yards and scoring points for them. It makes it tough on Alabama when you mix that tight end in there. Those three guys that can catch the ball and do damage.
Yeah, Mason Taylor's been, he's been a problem as a receiver. They really utilize him and they go to him in a lot of those big time moments. It's 3rd down and 7 and you got to go to somebody. A lot of people will think Kyron Lacey, and certainly is a part of that. Aaron Anderson certainly been a part of that at times, but Mason Taylor is a guy who you really have to keep an eye on. And just his ability as a catch radius, his ability to go up and win those 50-50 balls, it really puts a strain on you, as a defender, because it's tough. It's like Nick Saban's always talked about the tight end position, the mismatch problems that position can create. Because if you can get the right guys in there, defense have a hard time. If you want to try to match the athleticism, then you're going to be lacking something as far as the size, and they can essentially bully you with their size. If you try to match it with their size, well, do your guys have the athleticism to keep up with them? And Mason Taylor is kind of one of those guys, and that is going to make it difficult because you got a quarterback that can get in the football. It's one of we know Alabama has been susceptible to giving up explosive opportunities downfield. Not everybody has capitalized on that. Tennessee didn't capitalize on it enough. USF didn't capitalize on it enough. I don't think South Carolina did enough, even though they did a little bit. LSU is going to be able to capitalize on some of that. And so you've just got to be able to weather that storm. It's going to generate, the explosive, exciting plays. It's going to have that, Death Valley really rocking. You've got to be able to weather those storms and handle the adversity. I don't think Alabama has always done that well this year, but I certainly think they're capable. They just got to play some complimentary football.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, though, to be talking about Alabama and LSU as a playoff game. And you mentioned this, and I felt like you were talking about how the people that thought that the regular season would not mean the same amount. And I'm one of those people, but you know what? I agree with you on that. Like, I wasn't thinking about two teams that would really be out of it being really in it now, so that this turns into a more meaningful game. And on a normal year, a 2-loss Alabama and a 2-loss LSU, normal as in before the college football playoff, would be, basically fighting for the scraps that were left over from, whoever went and played for the national championship. So that's where the expanded playoff really does help you out a lot, because, you're right. Both of these teams are alive. The winner has by far, when you look at the percentages, the chance to win the rest of their games. And I'm talking about, 70, 80, 90% chance on the rest of the games for both teams. So, and this one's a 50-50. So the winner of this game, flip a coin, goes on to, for Alabama, play Mercer, then at Oklahoma, not a good Oklahoma team, and then a really bad Auburn team, although they'll probably play Alabama, unlike they've played everyone else this year, at least in the first half, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's not just Alabama and LSU. Like Ole Miss fans, they typically would be out of it, but they're still able to be involved, and they're still hoping they can figure out a way to get in. Clemson fans, they're still involved. They're trying to figure out, how can their team get in. I mean, you've got people saying kind of absurd things, saying, maybe there's a possibility South Carolina can find themselves in it. That's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now, but I mean, the fact that you can even remotely have that conversation. I mean, their 3 losses are to 3 top 20 teams in Ole Miss, Alabama, and LSU, and they've beat, obviously they beat the brakes off of a top 10 Texas A&M. They beat the brakes off of Kentucky. They beat the brakes off of Oklahoma. So, I mean, that they struggle with Old Dominion in week 1, but they've been a really good team since then. And I don't think when you talk about Vanderbilt and how they've looked, you talk about the fact that Tennessee's number 7, talk about the fact that South Carolina looks really good. Missouri and Alabama handled business against Missouri. It's like the 3 games Alabama kind of went on their struggle, run. it wasn't like they were playing, a rinky-dink team that just, they played terrible. They were playing good SEC football teams, and they had trouble. But I just don't think that the sky was. We didn't think it was falling back then, and I don't think it's falling right now. But some of these problems, especially going into Baton Rouge, you've got to avoid some of the issues that you had going into Knoxville, because you gave Tennessee every opportunity to take that game.
Yeah.
And that's just something that if you give LSU all those opportunities, I guarantee you they're going to take it. Eventually they're going to say, hey, if you don't want it, we'll take it. But, the fact that Alabama is still in this conversation, I think it's pretty big.
Tennessee worried me with the run game, and I talked about that before going in. I knew that they were going to be able to run the ball, and it was going to be tough. This game, LSU's really not a running team. I mean, Emory got hurt at the beginning of the season, and he's an exceptional player, and it's been really tough for them to replace him. What they do is throw the ball. You got Alabama with the inexperience in the cornerback spots. The safeties have actually been really good, which is, when you lose Caleb Downs, surprising. But Bray Hubbard stepped right in for Keon Sabb. Do we expect Sabb to be back?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so to be Hubbard and Malachi Moore, but they did an excellent job. That both of them graded out. So it comes down to, and I saw somebody in the comment section talking about this. Alabama's corners and their defensive backs against these guys that can catch the football for LSU. I don't feel like this is the weak point for Alabama's defense. I think Alabama's defense is weak against teams that can run the football. I mean, maybe I'm crazy for saying that. Now, I'm not saying LSU's not going to score or anything, but I'm just saying, to me, where you beat Alabama is what Tennessee did. You run the ball and run the ball effectively.
Well, I think that the big thing is one of the weaknesses of Alabama is the explosive downfield stuff, but it's not like you're going to hit 20 of those in a game. You're going to hit a few, even when you're having a really explosive day. And I think on a down basis, Alabama's pass defense has actually been pretty good, but it's just, they have young guys there, or the consistency factor is what can be a major issue. That's led to some problems in some third down situations. That's led to some problems as far as just having those early downs, off of a turnover, explosive play downfield, those shot plays. It can be something like that. But, that's only going to generate so much offense for LSU. But what they do is because their run game has been somewhat ineffective, they're ranked outside of the top 100 as far as their rushing offense. It's a matter of they use the short, quick passing game to be an extension of their run game. And guys like Aaron Anderson really get involved on that front. Kyron Lacey, can generate some yards after the catch. Mason Taylor is a guy who can be the shorter route guy who can kind of get open on first down, and you can throw it to him, and it goes from a 1st and 10 to a 2nd and 2 or a 2nd and 3. And now you're, even if your run game is struggling, the entire playbook is open to you. So that's kind of, Alabama will need to be wary of that. And I'll be curious to see how they play LSU's defense. I don't think it's going to be a drop 8 situation. I think you need to be aggressive like you were with Carson Beck, not give him the time to process and just accept the fact that, hey, because we're being aggressive, we're taking some risk, and LSU's going to make us pay on a couple of them, but they're probably going to hit you on a couple regardless. Hopefully you can do enough to overcome that. If you can generate enough pressure to generate sacks that maybe you normally wouldn't get, or, generating turnovers, which Alabama's pressure has more so resulted in turnovers this year than sacks. So that would be the way I'd go about it.
Yeah. Don't forget about Bam Bam back in that safety spot too, right?
Hey, I will say, Mincy, playing safety, I think that he is such an interesting player. I don't know if he's going to be in this conversation to actually get playing time, but I thought Jaleel Hurley, when he was coming out, kind of being a top 50 player, I just didn't like really the long-term outlook at corner. He hadn't really done a whole lot up to this point, but it was with Mincy, I thought his ceiling as a corner was way higher than Hurley's, even though they were actually kind of similarly ranked according to some outlets. But it was the same situation where I'm like, I think he can be an exceptional safety. Just the length, I think he's got, the athleticism. He's a physical guy. He can really do some things for you as far as being a 6'3", plus guy out there on the outside playing corner. But also that size and length can really help you as far as being a safety, trying to get over the top of him. And, I like the fact, he's got that versatility, And with Alabama maybe, missing Keon Sabb a little bit, I think figuring out different ways that maybe you can get him on the field a little bit more, that would be great. I don't know if it's going to be against LSU, but at some point this season, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he contributed a little bit at safety.
We want you guys to contribute with a thumbs up as you hang out with us on Cover Crimson and the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. And please be a part of it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you know when we're dropping content. And we'll have content previewing this game up until Saturday. And then Saturday afterwards, we'll be taking your calls as we break down the Alabama and LSU game. So we'll be up late. We'll have to drink a lot of coffee to make sure that we stay up because it's a 6:30 game. And that means we'll be on at like 10 something, right? So it'll be pretty late. But anyway, the other thing too is mybookie.ag. Use the promo code next round to double your initial deposit. LSU fans, I see a lot of you in here. One thing I know about you guys is you like to spend money. Go to mybookie.ag and use that promo code. And normally it's on alcohol because when you guys come to town, you drink everybody out of house and home, which is pretty funny. I've always enjoyed the LSU rivalry. So I remember one time going to the game at Tiger Stadium in a limousine with my friend Catfish. You guys know Catfish. And we got stuck there where you couldn't move, right? I mean, I'm looking at the stadium and some guy's like wearing the pimp coat, the Tiger pimp coat, and he's got this big flask of something, and he knocks on the window and he yells in, "Go Tigers!" And I said, I said, "Roll Tide!" And he's like, oh, whatever he said. And he's like, "Here, try this," and hands me his flask. And then he went off. And so they're a lively bunch.
Hey, I think every Alabama fan has had run-ins with LSU fans at some point. I've met some good LSU fans.
Yeah.
This isn't I'm an ofer, but man, I was back during COVID when I was working for the radio station up in North Alabama. I was coming out of Walmart, not a mask on, and I just gotten out in the parking lot where I could finally pull it down. I wasn't inside anymore, and an LSU fan passed me, and they're like, "Are you?" And I really don't. I mean, I just pulled it down. I don't know how they recognize me so quick, but they're like, "Are you Clint Lamb?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." I'm thinking, they listen to the show or something, and the guy was just like, "F you, Clint Lamb," and I mean, just no problem. And I was like, I was just like, I mean, okay, I don't know where we go from here. But yeah, I mean, they're a bold bunch, but they're a fun bunch too. I will say that's what makes this rivalry great. Anybody that didn't call this a rivalry game, it absolutely is. It's going to be a night game. It's going to be a hostile environment, and Alabama's got to bring it.
All right, guys, we'll have content, like I said, all week. We'll hear from Jake Coker, Elephant in the Room, Mike Johnson, the All-American Report. Clint, you got a lot of stuff going on too.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Like I said, Stacey Blackwood's already gotten some content, getting some matchups, getting that discussion going. I'll be chiming in with that probably tomorrow. I've already kind of looked at quite a bit, but I want to continue. I want to bring both sides of the football, the discussions that we got going on over there. A lot of fun. We're going to start looking at playoff scenarios. I mean, just, obviously after this game, and it won't be a guaranteed easy ride to the playoffs, but I really think if you can get by LSU and you can kind of start to right this ship, you can really start talking about, okay, what are some scenarios? What is Alabama looking at? A lot of people feel like, just win out and you're in. And I kind of in that boat too, but it's also, what are some things that could really help Alabama either way, as far as maybe Georgia winning or somebody else losing or whatever. So we got all those conversations happening over at covercrimson.com. If you haven't already, go sign up and get in on those conversations.
Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us, and we will talk to you again coming up later tonight. Roll Tide, everybody.